Hey guys, tonight I want to tell you something that's been sitting in my chest for years. It's around 1:45 a.m. as I'm saying this, and I'm sitting in my little kitchen with the same yellow-tinted bulb that's been flickering since last winter. The refrigerator hums like it's trying to comfort me. Outside, there's a distant siren somewhere far enough not to be urgent, but close enough to remind me I'm still in the city. Anyway, this all started with a phone call, the kind you think you're prepared for until you're not. It was a Tuesday night when Mom called me from her landline. Who even uses a landline anymore, right? But she always did. I don't trust those pocket radios, she'd say. I still remember the sound of her voice, warbling through a line that sounded 20 years older than her. She said, "I just wanted to hear your voice, that's all." And I said something dumb like, "Well, you heard it. Good night." I wish I could say that was the first or last time I brushed her off like that. But it wasn't. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there. I always love seeing that. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let me take you into the heart of it all. My name's Michael. I'm 58. For the past 25 years, I've worked as a high school counselor. Not quite a teacher, not quite a therapist. Somewhere in between. I talk to kids who think their worlds are ending because someone didn't text back. And I do my best not to roll my eyes. But the person this story's about isn't one of my students. It's about my parents. Mostly my mom, if I'm honest. And this call, it cracked something open in me that I've been nailing shut for decades. I used to think I'd already said everything I needed to say to them. And then suddenly, her voice thin, gentle, scratchy, was asking for something I couldn't give. "You okay?" she asked. That was the part that really got me. Not "how are you" or "what have you been up to," just "you okay?" I wasn't, not really. But I couldn't say that. I said, "Yay, busy." Busy is code for "leave me alone." What I didn't tell her was that I'd just come back from a grocery store run, where I stood in the cereal aisle for 10 minutes because a certain brand of granola reminded me of the kind she used to pack in my lunch. The kind I'd trade away every day in 5th grade for a Kit Kat because I thought she didn't care enough to buy real snacks. Turns out, it was all she could afford. Funny how little moments like that start to feel like sins once you're old enough to understand what love actually looks like. And here's the thing. I thought I had time. Thought we could talk some other day. That I'd finally call her back when I wasn't busy. But that night, that was the last time she'd ever call me from that landline. She died 3 weeks later. Stroke. Quick. Quiet. The kind of ending she probably would have preferred. No drama. No fuss. But the call, that echo of her voice in my ear, still rings louder than anything else. "You okay?" I'm not sure I've ever really answered her. And it's strange, because I've spent most of my adult life thinking I was past all of it. The yelling, the silence, the cold meals and colder goodnights. But it turns out grief doesn't respect the walls you build around it. It seeps in through the phone lines, through the sound of someone saying your name with just enough love to make it hurt. I stood in my kitchen for a long time after that call. I didn't even hang up properly. Just set the phone down on the counter and stared at it, like I expected it to speak again. I wanted her to say something else, even a complaint. Even. "You never visit," but that wasn't her style. She always made herself small around me, like she was afraid of taking up too much space in my life. And I think I let her do that. I think I encouraged it. God. There's this memory of her slicing peaches in the kitchen, wearing that old apron with the faded sunflowers on it. She had music on Fleetwood Mac or Carole King. Something warm. I was 10. maybe 11, she cut one slice too deep and nicked her finger. I remember her saying, "Whoops, that's what I get for singing." She laughed, wiped the blood on a dish towel, and kept slicing. It wasn't until years later that I realized how much of her life she lived like that, smiling through the sting, humming while she bled. And maybe I was too young to see it then, but I'm not anymore. That phone call, it was her version of a white flag, not a dramatic one. Not, "Let's talk about everything." Just, "Are you okay?" And I failed to meet her halfway. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat on the floor, back against the fridge, eating dry granola out of the bag, like some kind of penance. And I kept thinking, what if that was it? What if that was the last call I'll ever get? I was right. But the story didn't stop there. What I swore I'd never become, I used to say half joking, half certain that I'd never turn into my father. He was a man of silence, not the poetic kind, either. The heavy, punishing kind. The kind of silence that takes up space in a room, even when he wasn't in it. As a kid, I'd tiptoe around the house like noise might wake the sleeping bear. The air was always brittle when he was home, like a conversation might snap it in two. And yet, at some point, I became him. Not in voice or habits as he drank black coffee and read the newspaper. I sipped green tea and scroll my phone. But in the worst way, I learned how to make my presence an absence. That realization hit me the day after the funeral. I was standing in the kitchen again. Different kitchen, my house, modern appliances, nice tile floor, and my daughter, Ellie, was at the counter, munching toast. She was saying something about work, a bad client, something with spreadsheets or God, I don't even remember. But I wasn't really listening. I was nodding, doing that parental autopilot thing where you make the right noises at the right times. And then she stopped talking, mid-sentence. Just stopped. I looked up. She was staring at me. What I said, and she said, "Nothing. You look like you're somewhere else." I laughed it off, made a dumb joke about being old and tired. You know how many kids I've counseled through breakups this week? But the truth is, she was right. I was somewhere else. I was back in my childhood kitchen, watching my mom put her hand on my dad's shoulder, and him not even flinching, just kept reading. Like love was a draft he couldn't be bothered to acknowledge. And now, I was doing the same damn thing. You know the worst part? I didn't even mean to. It just happened. Like I inherited his silence the way other people inherit eye color or bad knees. Ellie didn't say anything else that morning, just grabbed her keys and kissed my head like she always does. But there was something in the way she walked to the door, shoulders tense, mouth pressed tight, that reminded me of Mom again. Mom always walked like that after Dad said something short and sharp, or didn't say anything at all. Funny thing, my dad never raised a hand to us. Not once. But I still flinch when someone raises their voice. Because with him, silence was the violence, the threat, the judgment. And I swore on every birthday candle and every New Year's toast that I wouldn't be that kind of father. But life has a way of sanding down your edges until you look a whole lot like the person you used to hate. I think I stopped being fully present the year Ellie left for college. She was the last to go. Her brothers were already out, scattered across states, calling on holidays and texting memes. But Ellie, she was my soft spot, my quiet kid. She used to follow me around the garden, asking questions about everything. Why do bees die after stinging? Why are your tomatoes always crooked? And I'd answer them, sometimes even correctly. We had this rhythm, and then she left, and I shut down. I told myself it was just the empty nest thing. I'd bounce back, but I didn't. I just got quieter. And the quieter I got, the louder the ghosts became. Mom's voice, Dad's silence, all of it circling in my head like background noise I couldn't mute. That's around the time I stopped picking up when Ellie called. Not always, just sometimes. Enough to notice the calls were getting fewer. Enough to feel like maybe she was learning to do what I had learned, how to talk less, how to expect less. And God, I hate that. It's a strange ache. Realizing you're becoming the very thing that shaped your wounds. Like watching yourself walk into a mirror and recognizing the villain. I used to blame Dad for everything. For Mom's quiet sadness. For my anxious stomach. For the way I hated Father's Day in school when we had to write poems about our dads. I wrote about a tree once. Called it strong and steady because I didn't know what else to say. I still have that poem, you know. Found it last year while cleaning out my garage. It's taped inside a folder labeled Michael, 4th grade. I read it and laughed. Strong and steady, more like stiff and silent. But now I wonder if that's how Ellie sees me. Do her memories of me come with warmth or with absence? I don't know. And I'm too scared to ask. That morning, after she left, I stood alone in the kitchen again. Same place, same tile, and for the first time in a while, I whispered something out loud. Don't become him. Not as a promise, just a plea to myself, to whatever version of me still believes change is possible. Because maybe, just maybe, it's not too late. The day she said nothing back. I remember the exact day the silence between us became something heavier than habit. It wasn't a fight. I wish it had been. Fights, at least, give you something to hold on to, something to replay, to apologize for, to circle back to with, I didn't mean that. But this wasn't a fight. It was a Sunday, early spring, and I just mowed the lawn. You know that smell, fresh cut grass mixed with gasoline from the mower? The kind that makes you feel like you've accomplished something useful. I was sitting on the porch, still in my grass-stained jeans, drinking a cold bottle of water like I'd earned it. Ellie came by with coffee, our little routine. Ever since she moved out. Sunday, coffee drop-offs. No pressure to stay. Just a hello, a smile, a to-go cup. But this time, she didn't smile. She handed me the coffee, nodded when I said thanks, and then just sat next to me. Didn't say much. Her eyes kept scanning the street, like she was waiting for someone else. I asked her how work was. She said fine. I asked about her roommate. She just shrugged. Then I said something dumb. I don't even remember what, probably some half-hearted advice about taxes, or taking care of her car. You know, the stuff dads say when we're trying to feel useful. But she didn't respond. Not with a nod, not with a sigh, not even with that practiced, okay, Dad. She just stared ahead, lips sealed. And the silence after that, it wasn't peaceful. It was loud, thundering, like she was saying 1,000 things without opening her mouth. I wanted to ask what was wrong. I should have. But you know what I did? I stood up, patted her shoulder, and said, "Let me know if you need anything." And I walked back inside. I walked away. I closed the screen door behind me, sat on the couch, and waited for the front door to open and close. When it finally did, I felt it in my ribs, like a door had shut in more ways than one. I've replayed that day in my head so many times, I swear I could write the script. Her blank stare, my cowardly retreat, the coffee cup left behind on the porch railing, half full and cold when I finally noticed it. I didn't text her after. I didn't call. I told myself I was giving her space. Told myself that if something was wrong, she'd come to me. But deep down, I knew I'd failed a test I hadn't studied for. Because silence in my house growing up wasn't neutral. It was punishment. It was a tool. And here I was, passing down the same tool without meaning to. I had inherited more than his silences. I had inherited the ability to make someone else feel small with it. You know what hurts most? That I don't think she was surprised. Ellie's always been the type to internalize. Never the one to yell or slam doors. She'd just go quiet. And that Sunday, she was quieter than ever. But not empty. That quiet was full of something. Pain, probably. Disappointment. I keep wondering what would have happened if I'd stayed on the porch. If I had really asked Ellie, is something going on, and then shut up long enough to listen. But I didn't. And I think something shifted that day. Something subtle, like a thread snapped between us. Too thin to notice until you tug on it again and feel slack where there used to be tension. The worst part is, life didn't stop. She still brought coffee the next week. Still texted, made it home after a long drive. Still posted dumb memes in the family group chat. But something in her eyes had changed. A softness gone. A distance forming. And I kept pretending it wasn't happening. Because if I acknowledged it, I'd have to confront the truth that I'd failed in the one area I promised I wouldn't. That I was becoming him in all the quietest ways. And just like my father, never asked my mother. What's wrong? Even when her eyes were red and her voice cracked, I didn't ask Ellie that day. I let the moment pass, and I'm still chasing it down. The message? She didn't mean to send. There are some moments that don't hit you until long after they happen. You scroll past them in your inbox or memory, thinking they're nothing, just noise. And then one night, at 2:17 a.m., they come back like a freight train. That's how it was with the message. It was a text, and I didn't even see it when she sent it. It had gotten buried beneath a stream of family group chats, work notifications, and those scam your Netflix account is suspended texts. I only saw it 3 days later while clearing out old messages. It said, "Do you think I'm hard to love?" That's it. No greeting, no emoji, no follow-up. I remember just staring at those words like they were in another language. Not because I didn't understand them, because I did. Too well. It was like someone had reached inside my chest and rattled something loose. My first instinct, panic. Immediate, icy panic. My second denial. Maybe she meant it as a joke. Maybe it was meant for someone else. Maybe it was some weird out-of-context reference I wasn't picking up. But none of that felt true. I didn't reply right away. I froze. I stared at that blinking cursor in the reply field like it was taunting me. What do you say to that? Of course not. Where did that come from? Are you okay? Eventually, I just typed, "Why would you ask that?" And she never answered. She never even acknowledged I'd replied. It was like I'd walked into a room where she used to be still warm from her presence, but she was gone. For days, I didn't push. Told myself maybe she regretted sending it, that it wasn't my place to dig. But I knew, deep down, that message wasn't meant for silence. It was a crack in the dam, one I had to look through, not patch over. I spent that whole week distracted. I burned dinner one night, trying to text her and saute onions at the same time. I forgot to call my brother back for his birthday. I even showed up to the dentist on the wrong day, which, for a guy who avoids the dentist like plague, says something. Eventually, I called her. She picked up. Her voice was calm, but clipped. I asked about that text. She said, what text I reminded her. She exhaled through her nose like she was disappointed I'd brought it up. I was having a moment. She said, forget it. But how could I? Because I remember thinking, where did she even learn to ask that? Who planted that doubt in her head? Was it a boy? A friend? Or worse? Me, because if there's one thing I never wanted my daughter to wonder, it's whether she's lovable. Ellie was the kind of kid who apologized to chairs she bumped into. She once cried because she thought a lizard looked lonely. She made me a paper tie every year until she was 16, and even then, She still slipped one into my Father's Day card. She is love, walking around in a hoodie and sneakers. But she asked me if she was hard to love, and that tells me I failed in some quiet, invisible way. Not in the big, dramatic ways, no screaming, no slammed doors, but in the pauses, the long silences, the way I sometimes looked at my phone instead of her, the way I gave her space when she actually needed presence. I think she was testing me with that message, and I failed again. I didn't rush over. I didn't call twice. I didn't remind her of who she is not loud enough. At least, it reminded me of a time when she was 8. She fell off her bike and scraped both knees. Sat there, blinking back tears, looking at me like she wasn't sure if she was allowed to cry. I said, "You're fine, Ellie. Shake it off." She nodded, stood up, and pedaled again. But now I wonder how many times did she shake it off, when what she really needed was for me to drop to one knee and say, "It's okay to hurt that message. That was a scraped knee." And I told her to shake it off. I'm still trying to find the words I should have said, still trying to rewind to the moment I could have kneeled beside her and said, "No, you're not hard to love. You are everything." But the moment's passed, and I can't tell if she's waiting for me to try again or if that door is already closed. When I heard her laugh at someone else's joke, there's a kind of laugh you only ever get to hear if you've truly known someone. Not the polite chuckle, not the forced giggle, but that full body, breathless kind of laugh. The one that tells you they feel safe. Ellie used to laugh like that with me. There was this thing she did whenever something genuinely cracked her up. She'd tilt her head back, close her eyes, and slap my arm like I was a part of the joke too. I can't count how many times we ended up crying from laughing over the dumbest things. One time, it was a squirrel that looked like it was doing squats on our porch. Another, it was just the word moist, which she insisted was the ugliest word in the human language. She was 12. It was hilarious, but I hadn't heard that laugh in a long time. And then one day, I did, but it wasn't mine she was laughing at. I was walking past the kitchen while she was on a video call. I wasn't eavesdropping, not on purpose, but when your daughter's been quiet for months and you suddenly hear that kind of laugh, the kind that fills a room, you stop. You freeze like your body doesn't want to spook the sound. She was on her laptop, curled up in a hoodie I didn't recognize. Hair in that messy bun she always said looked better when she didn't try. And she was laughing. Big, loud, real laughing. I stood there, just around the corner, not wanting to interrupt. Not really wanting to know who it was, either. But I listened. There was a guy's voice on the other end. He said something about a raccoon stealing his pizza, and she just howled. She leaned back, that same familiar head tilt, eyes shut, hands slapping the air like she wished someone was beside her to smack. And I realized I hadn't made her laugh like that in over a year. I felt unnecessary, like an old coat still hanging by the door long after winter's gone. Useful once, loved, even, but now just there. My first reaction was jealousy, which is stupid. I know. She's not my partner. She's my daughter, but it felt like I'd been replaced in a part of her world I used to live in without question. I stood there for maybe 30 seconds before backing away. Quietly, no footsteps, no creaks, just invisible. Back in the living room, I sat down and stared at the TV without really watching. Some cooking show, a man yelling about undercooked risotto, and I just kept hearing that laugh. Part of me was glad, genuinely. Seeing her light up like that made something unclench in my chest. It told me she wasn't lost, not really. She still had her spark, but the other part of me, the one that still pictured her in footy pajamas, climbing into my lap because the thunder scared her, that part ached. Later that night, I asked her about the call, just casually. "Talking to anyone fun today?" She shrugged. Just a friend. I nodded, tried to match her calm. Someone from school, she said. Kind of. I didn't push. I wanted to. God. I wanted to ask everything. What's his name? How long have you known him? Does he treat you well? Does he know how lucky he is? But I didn't. Because I remembered what happened the last time I pried. When she was 15, she came home crying. Something about a girl at school spreading rumors. I sat her down and started offering solutions, what to say. Who to tell? How to fight back. She got quiet. Waited until I finished. Then she whispered, I didn't want you to fix it. I just wanted you to hear me. That stuck. So now, whenever she opened a window into her life, even a small one, I tried not to burst through it. I just stood nearby, quietly hoping she'd invite me in. But hearing her laugh like that with someone else, it made me realize she's found new rooms. Ones I don't have a key to anymore. And that's part of it, right? Letting them grow. Letting them build their own wings. Still, there's this small, selfish part of me that wishes I could be her favorite person again. Like when she used to ask me to braid her hair badly on purpose because she said my terrible braids were funnier than YouTube tutorials. Like when she insisted I do the dad voice when reading bedtime stories. And she'd giggle, even though she'd heard it 100 times. I miss being the reason she laughed. I miss being invited into the joke. And now, every time I hear her laugh in another room, part of me smiles and part of me grieves. The dinner I burned and what I didn't say. I don't remember what I was trying to cook that night. Maybe it was my half-decent attempt at lasagna, or one of those dads trying something from TikTok meals that usually ended in laughter, or pizza delivery. Either way, the oven was too hot. The timer was too long, and I ended up setting off the smoke alarm. The funny part, that smoke alarm was probably the most conversation we'd had in weeks. Ellie came rushing down the stairs, phone in hand, a look of alarm on her face. She saw me waving a kitchen towel beneath the screaming sensor and just blinked. Are you okay? She asked. Flat. Just the ghost of Chef Boyardee taking revenge, I said, fanning wildly and coughing for dramatic effect. She smiled barely, but it didn't reach her eyes. I wanted to make it better. The dinner, the mood, us. But instead of inviting her to sit and eat the sad, charred lasagna with me, I mumbled something like, I'll fix it, and turned back to the stove. And she went right back upstairs. That's the thing about silence. It's sneaky. It doesn't come with an argument or a slammed door. It's just there, growing slowly like mold behind the walls. That night, after I'd eaten alone because I still ate it. Of course I did. Stubborn old me, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at her untouched plate, the burnt edges, the way the cheese had bubbled up wrong, the little piece of parsley I'd added like a fool trying to pretend it was restaurant quality. I kept thinking, why didn't I just ask her to sit? Not force her, not guilt her, just ask. Because maybe she would have said no. Or maybe she would have paused, sniffed the air, and teased me about my culinary crimes. Maybe we would have eaten in silence. But we would have been in the same room. Instead, I fed the silence again, like I always seemed to do. I don't think Ellie knew that lasagna was for her, that I'd been trying to recreate a meal we used to make together, back when she was in 8th grade and obsessed with becoming a food blogger. She used to make me take photos of her holding up a wooden spoon, like it was a sword. Chef Ellie, slayer of blandness, she'd declare, striking a pose. I still have those pictures in an old folder labeled Dinner Warriors. Haven't looked at them in years. After I cleaned up, I stood in the hallway outside her door, holding the plate of reheated garlic bread. I could hear her talking quietly on the phone again. That same guy, maybe, or someone new. I knocked. Softly, she paused. Yeah, brought some garlic bread, I said. There was a beat of silence. Thanks, she replied, but didn't open the door. So I left it on the floor outside, like a room service tray, like a peace offering. I walked away, telling myself I was giving her space, respecting her boundaries, being a modern, enlightened parent. But deep down, I was just afraid she'd open the door and I wouldn't know what to say. Or worse, she wouldn't open it at all. That's the part that gets me, the not knowing. Did she eat the bread? Did she roll her eyes at it? Did she know it was me trying? Or did she think it was just a habit me? Always fussing, always hovering. There's a kind of fear that doesn't come with panic. It comes with numbness. The slow drip of days where you pass each other like ghosts. Where how was your day turns into you good, and eventually into nothing at all. I think back to that night all the time. Not because the dinner was important, but because of what I didn't say. I didn't say, I miss you. I didn't say, I'm sorry I made everything about fixing things instead of just being there. I didn't say, the silence between us is louder than the smoke alarm, and it's breaking my heart. Instead, I scrubbed pans and washed forks and pretended like maybe tomorrow would be different. That's the thing about regret. It's never loud. It's just a low hum in the background of everything, like static you can't quite tune out. And yet, every night after that, I left a little something outside her door. Not always food. Sometimes a folded hoodie she forgot in the dryer. Sometimes a sticky note with a dumb dad joke. Why did the lasagna go to therapy? It had too many layers. She never responded, never brought it up. But one night, about a week later, I found one of my notes folded neatly and slid under my door. No words on it. Just a tiny heart drawn in the corner. And for the first time in a long time, I slept without that weight on my chest. The moment I almost gave up on us. It was around January, cold, gray, and unforgiving, just like my mood at the time. You know, that kind of morning where even the toast burns without provocation. The heater takes forever to kick in, and the dog throws up on the carpet. Yeah, that kind of day. And I remember sitting in the driveway in my old Camry, letting it idle far longer than necessary. Ellie had already left for school. She did that more and more, slipping out before I came downstairs, as if we were on different time zones under the same roof. The seat was cold under me, my hands gripping the steering wheel like it might anchor me to something real. I was supposed to be heading into work part-time at the community center by then, but I just sat there, staring through the windshield at nothing. And it hit me. I didn't know who my daughter was anymore. Not in the dramatic, teenagers are strangers way. I mean, truly didn't know. I didn't know her favorite show anymore. Didn't know the name of the boy or girl she kept texting. Didn't know what music she played with those AirPods jammed in all the time. Worse, I didn't know if she still knew me. That thought, it hollowed me out. I remember whispering out loud to the fogged glass, maybe she's better off without me trying. There was no thunderclap, no angel choir swooping in to say, don't give up. Just the faint creak of the passenger seat as my overweight gym bag slid off and thudded to the floor. Even my stuff was trying to escape. I laughed, bitterly. Then I cried, a little quiet and ugly, the kind you don't even wipe away. Just let it fall down your jaw and dry in place like shame. I didn't tell anyone that. Not my buddy Mark from bowling league. Not Carol. My neighbor, who always offered hot chocolate in an unsolicited mom voice. I didn't even write it in that dusty journal I sometimes fake write in to feel like I'm reflecting. Because how do you admit that you thought about quitting? On your own kid, it's not like I was going to abandon her. But emotionally, I was starting to pull back, telling myself, She doesn't want you involved. You're embarrassing. You're the problem. And you know the worst part. Some of that was probably true. I was awkward. I did hover. I did make everything about fixing. That night, I didn't leave anything outside her door. I told myself I forgot, that I got tired. But the truth is, I wanted to see if she'd notice, if she'd miss it. And she did. The next morning, I woke up to find my hoodie folded on the kitchen table. The one she always stole when she had cramps or felt sick. On top of it, a little post-it with a single word, thanks. I stared at that word like it was in another language. It could have meant anything. Thanks for the space. Thanks for the silence. Thanks for not giving up. Or maybe just thanks for the hoodie. Dad? But it was enough to get me out of bed. We didn't talk more after that. Not at first, but I stopped pulling back. I kept leaving little things, notes, pieces of chocolate, once. A tiny cactus with googly eyes I found at the gas station checkout. I left it with a note that said, for when you're feeling a little prickly, that one. She actually laughed it. I heard it through the door. I didn't say anything, just stood there like a dork, grinning at the hallway like it was a sunrise. I know it sounds silly, that I almost gave up over burnt lasagna in a couple weeks of silence. But when you're a parent, especially a single one, you live off crumbs of connection. You hold on to them like lifelines. The truth is, it wasn't one moment that saved us. It was dozens of tiny, clumsy ones stitched together by the hope that she was still in there, somewhere, behind the earbuds in the silence. And maybe I wasn't the best at saying I love you out loud. Maybe I still fumbled every serious talk. But I was still here. And for now, so was she. Her birthday and the ice cream breakdown. Ellie turned 17 on a Wednesday. Not a milestone birthday. Not a sweet 16. Not the you're an adult, now 18. Just 17. An odd number in more ways than one. She didn't want a party, didn't want dinner out, didn't even want a cake. I asked if she wanted me to invite her mom. That question hung in the air like burnt popcorn smoke. She shrugged and said, "Doesn't matter." That "doesn't matter" cut me deeper than she knew. But I'd been reading between the lines long enough to know it meant yes. It does. But I'm tired of being disappointed. So I decided to do what I always did. Something small, something stupid, something just for her. There's this ice cream place across town, Sweet Spot Creamery. It's the kind of place where the menu hasn't changed since the 90s. And the guy behind the counter has a beard that looks like it could shelter a squirrel family. Ellie used to love their birthday cake swirl with extra rainbow sprinkles. I used to pretend I hated the drive, but secretly, I liked the ritual of it loud music, a cracked windshield, and her singing along, always off key, always too loud. So I got in the car, drove across town, got her favorite in a cup with the sprinkles on the side, because she said once a crunch ruins the texture. That was Ellie for you, Tiny. Specific preferences she never compromised on. I came home with it in a little cooler bag, left it outside her door with a sticky note that said, "Happy birthday. E. Hope this still counts." And then I heard something I hadn't heard in months. Her door opened, not slowly, not cautiously, like she needed it to open. And for a split second, I thought we were going to have a moment, the kind you see in a movie where the dad and daughter hug and everything melts away. But no, she stared at me like I just read her diary out loud. "Why are you doing this?" she asked, and I didn't have a rehearsed answer. So I said, "Because I remember, and because I still care." That's when she broke. She didn't cry pretty. Ellie's never been a delicate crier. It's messy, loud. She scrunches her whole face up like someone just pressed play on every memory she tried to forget. I just stood there, holding that dumb ice cream, wondering if I'd messed everything up by caring in the wrong way. Again. And then she said something that still haunts me. "I don't know how to need you anymore." Let that sit with you. I didn't say anything profound. I just nodded, put the ice cream on her nightstand, and left. It melted. Of course it did. She never ate it. Later that night, I heard her rummaging in the kitchen. The empty cup was in the trash the next morning, sprinkles untouched, like some kind of silent funeral for childhood. I looked at that trash can and felt like the worst parent on earth, like I'd held her childhood in my hands and watched it melt literally. But what she said stuck with me. I don't know how to need you. I kept turning that phrase over in my head for weeks. It wasn't anger. It wasn't rejection. It was honesty. We spend so long teaching our kids to be independent, but we never teach ourselves what to do once they stop reaching for our hand. There's no manual for that part. No bedtime story that ends with. And then the princess told her dad she didn't need him anymore. And they both lived separately ever after. It's just silence. But silence doesn't always mean the story's over. Sometimes it means the story is changing. That night, I sat in the garage with the cooler bag still on the passenger seat. I reached in and found one last drop of melted swirl in the corner of the cup. I touched it with my finger and tasted it. It was warm, sweet, and gone, just like those rides across town, just like the girl who used to sing off-key, just like the part of me that thought I knew what fatherhood meant, what she never told me. Until then, it wasn't some movie moment, no swelling music, no cathartic monologue. No, I'm sorry. Dad that wrapped everything in a perfect little bow. It was just a Tuesday. You know the kind. Dull light through the blinds, coffee that tastes burnt no matter what you do, and a weird ache in your lower back that reminds you you're not 35 anymore. She was leaving for college in 4 days. We hadn't really talked since the birthday breakdown. We'd existed in parallel sharing space, avoiding eye contact, passing each other like ghosts, haunting the same hallway. I'd tried knocking twice. Once with a load of folded laundry. Once with some leftover pad thai she used to like. Both attempts ended in muttered thanks and closed doors. So when I came home from the grocery store and found her sitting at the kitchen table, hoodie on, headphones off, laptop closed, I thought maybe I'd hallucinated it. She didn't look up right away, just kept drawing little circles on the wooden surface with her index finger, round and round, like she was trying to erase something permanent. Then she said, "I have something I need to tell you." And instantly, every bad possibility slammed into my chest. Pregnant, dropping out, going to live with her mom, joining a cult, you name it, my brain conjured it. But it wasn't any of those things. She just said, "You stopped looking at me the way you used to." I froze. Because, well, what do you say to that? I wanted to tell her she was wrong. That I looked at her every day with love and pride and aching confusion. That I memorized her face when she wasn't looking. That I'd fight anyone who tried to hurt her. But I knew what she meant. She meant the look that told her she mattered more than the mistake she'd made. She meant the look I used to give when she came home from second grade with a drawing of a cat that looked like a potato, and I taped it to the fridge like it was the Mona Lisa. She meant softness, and I hadn't been soft in a long time. I'd been stressed, bitter, distant. I'd been the man who washed dishes too loudly and sighed when she forgot to take out the trash and scrolled through his phone instead of asking how her day was. She didn't need me to explain. She needed me to see it. So I nodded. That's all I could do. She finally looked up then. And her eyes weren't angry. They weren't even sad. They were tired. Not the kind of tired that sleep fixes. The kind you carry. And she said, "I get why. But it still hurt." I told her I didn't know how to fix it. she said. I don't want you to fix it. I just wanted to say it out loud before I left. And then she did the thing I didn't expect. She reached out, took my hand across the table, and held it. Just held it. Her fingers were cold. Mine were shaking. Neither of us spoke for at least a minute. But something passed between us like one of those underwater signals divers use when they can't talk but need to say something important. It didn't make everything okay, but it cracked something open, and for the first time in years, I let her see me cry. Ugly, middle-aged, nose-dripping crying. And she didn't flinch, didn't mock me. She just handed me a paper towel from the holder and said, "You're still my dad, even when you're bad at it." I laughed at that. It hurt, but I laughed. She smirked, and for one fragile moment, I saw her as she'd been, and as she was becoming all in the same breath. That night, I left her a letter under her pillow. It wasn't poetic, just real. I told her I loved her, that I was proud, that I wished I'd listened more and reacted less, that I hoped someday, when she was ready, she'd let me be a part of her life again, not as the fixer, but just as the guy who shows up with ice cream and messes things up occasionally. She never mentioned the letter, but the next morning, the sticky note on the fridge had changed. It used to say, "Don't forget the almond milk." Now it said, "Don't forget, I love you," even when I suck at showing it. That note is still there, a little warped from the moisture, still taped with the same crooked angle, still the most beautiful thing in my house. The last drive together and letting go the morning she left for college. I woke up 2 hours early, not on purpose. Just that weird, heavy kind of waking like your body knows something's ending before your brain does. I stared at the ceiling for a while, listening to the hum of the ceiling fan and the occasional car passing outside. Like each sound was trying to talk me out of being the over-emotional dad for once. Spoiler alert, it didn't work. I made pancakes. Her favorite kind, blueberry. Slightly burnt edges. Too much syrup. I even remembered to cut them into quarters like I used to when she had braces and couldn't chew properly. I didn't expect her to eat much, but I just wanted a memory, a soft one, like the kind you keep in your glove compartment years after the map's outdated. She came down in sweats and messy hair, dragging her suitcase like it owed her rent. No makeup, no pretense, just my kid, on the edge of the rest of her life. Smells like sugar and panic. She mumbled. I grinned. I added extra panic. Secret recipe. She smiled, and my heart broke a little, because I knew that smile wouldn't show up in the kitchen every morning anymore. I knew this was the start of something new for her, and a soft, slow ending for me. We loaded her stuff into the car in silence. She double-checked the backpack with her headphones, laptop, and the notebook I got her for graduation. Inside it, I'd written on the first page, "You are allowed to mess up. Just keep writing." I think she read it. She never said. But I caught her flipping through the pages when she thought I wasn't looking. The drive to campus was 90 minutes of half conversations and shared playlists. Every song suddenly felt like a metaphor. Every lyric sounded like a farewell. She dozed off halfway through, her head resting against the window, her hand still curled around the hoodie drawstring like it tethered her to something. I wanted to reach over, to smooth her hair, like I used to when she had nightmares about monsters under the bed. But I didn't. Not because I didn't want to, because I knew this was the part where I started learning how to let her go without losing her. At the dorm, things happened fast. Boxes, handshakes, RA introductions. The awkward tour of a room barely big enough for 2 suitcases and a dream. She pretended not to care when I told her where the laundry room was. I pretended not to panic when I realized she hadn't packed a single jacket. And then it was just time. Time to leave. No trumpets, no soft fade out. Just me standing beside my car, fumbling for words that weren't cliches. She beat me to it. I know we didn't say everything, she said, but I heard enough. And I nodded, because she was right. Sometimes. The apologies in the showing up, in the remembering, in the pancakes and the sticky notes, in the way your hand shakes when you try not to say goodbye too loud. I hugged her. She held on longer than I thought she would. Don't forget me, she said into my shoulder. Impossible, I whispered. And then I got in the car. I didn't cry right away. Not until I passed the second gas station. The one we used to stop at after school for slushies and gum that lost flavor in 10 seconds. I pulled in, bought a red slushie out of pure muscle memory, and sat in the car while the ice melted into syrup and the dashboard caught the light. She didn't need me like she used to. But maybe, just maybe, she still wanted me around. And that's something. That's enough. Later that night, I texted her. Nothing long. Just, hey, hope the room's not too weird. I miss you already, she replied. Already got one sticky note on my desk. Don't forget to water your peace lily or your father's heart will wilt. Very subtle. I smiled. She added, love you, even when you overwater things. And I realized I wasn't losing her. We were just rewriting the story. Different chapters, same love. And this time, I was listening. It's quiet now. The kind of quiet that feels earned, not the silence of absence, but the hush that settles in when you've said what needed saying. When the storm passes, and there's still a chair by the window, still warm pancakes cooling on a plate, still a note stuck crooked to the fridge door. That's how life feels lately. Not perfect, not fixed, but softer. Some days. I walk past her old room and still expect to hear music bleeding through the wall. I still pause at the grocery store and debate whether to buy the cereal she liked, even though I don't eat it. I still catch myself saving funny videos on my phone to show her next time we're together. The difference is I don't do it out of guilt anymore. I do it out of love. Love that doesn't demand. Love that doesn't always get returned on schedule. Love that's okay with waiting at the edge of a text thread or laughing alone in the car at a memory no one else remembers. And maybe that's the best kind. The kind that doesn't fade when the doors close or the highway stretches too far. The kind that grows quieter, warmer, truer. So wherever you are, if you've got a sticky note tucked somewhere in your life, a reminder of someone you're trying to hold on to, I hope you read it tonight. Really read it. Because sometimes love looks like a note. Sometimes it's a pancake. Sometimes it's just being there. Quietly, in case they need you again. Good night. Sleep easy. And remember, you're still allowed to rewrite the story, even now.